Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vinci Hair Podcast. Great to see everybody. Today we've got a very special guest, podcaster, interviewer, life coach, entrepreneur. The list is pretty endless. Philip Sykes, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh.
How are you?
Great to be here. Exceptionally well, thank you.
Yeah? Got here in one piece.
One piece, but as always, a little challenge here and there, but we got you.
Are you truly a Londoner if it's not caught up in traffic, trains and whatever else, strikes, goodness knows what else, eh?
Well, that's part of the course.
It is part of the course. Thanks for coming in today. Your story is really quite interesting and has got quite a lot of, I mean, certainly with a lot of our audience of who listen to the show, who look at hair transplants, who are interested in the cosmetic surgery, have obviously a lot of crossover with the world of etiquette, manners, life improvements. But what I always quite like to do is I always quite like to go back to the very start, get an understanding of where you grew up and what leads you to sitting here today. So run me from the very start. Where did it all start?
Where did it start? My dad originally was from the United Kingdom, went over to Africa in the 60s, met my mum in Johannesburg, and I'm the eldest of four. Mum and dad were absolutely fastidious about etiquette and manners and engaging with people on the right level. And so old school principles, basically, all old, very, very strong family values and core values. And we were very blessed, Josh, to go to a fantastic school. It's actually been regarded as in the top 100 of the world schools now, called Michael House. And that was, there wasn't an option. Etiquette, manners, punctuality, although today was a little bit of an exception, but no, punctuality, all those sort of things. When someone walks in the room, you stood up, you greeted, you smiled. It wasn't an option. And when I left school, I didn't actually have a clue what I wanted to do. And so I came over to the UK for the first time, having traveled Europe for 3 months on a Eurail pass back in a long time ago. Maybe you were born, maybe you weren't, but 1987, beginning of 1987.
Just.
So what happened was I came into London and my grandparents were up near Whipsnade Zoo. My grandfather was a medical doctor in the UK. Obviously, he'd be 110 now or something like that. And saw them, met relations up in Knutsford. And then I got a digs in Camden Town, of all places. Now, you can imagine a young white South African. My eyes were on stalks. I was like a dog with four tails. I was like, wow, what's going on here? It was just exceptional. And I got a job at the Hard Rock Cafe.
Oh, right,
yeah,
okay.
Hard Rock Cafe, cleaning tables.
The one
on
in
Hyde Park Corner, the original.
Yeah, okay.
The original. And I cleaned tables and jumped in the dish room and did dishes. And then I managed to get onto the door as a sort of assistant manager. And then I threw my air ticket away because on that 3 months of traveling Europe, I discovered this amazing ability to ski. So I went off and did a ski season in Kitzbühel, cleaning rooms, and then literally getting up the mountain and finding anyone who could ski and follow them and sort of, I'm very visual. So I skied that whole season. It was phenomenal. Then I went back to South Africa, mid-88. Now, in South Africa, our academic years go from January to pretty much December. And so my mum said to me, what are you going to do? And I found the most phenomenal job at South Africa's almost, if not the best restaurant. It was in the top 10, called The Colony. And it so happened that actually I met the owner's son in London at a digs party. And I joined The Colony. And it was honestly, Josh, for me, was one of the most incredible groundings that anyone could ask for, because it taught me and it sort of added to my upbringing, but also that attention to detail, being fastidious, being very clear on how to communicate with people, because it was all about connection. And I was there for 3 years, but while I was there, I started hotel management.
What was South Africa like in the late 80s, early 90s?
Very free and easy. Very free and easy. You could, not that, despite the apartheid, one doesn't want to get into politics, but it was free and easy. And I was very fortunate. I always went to a school which was multiracial. So for me, no difference. But it was free and easy. It was a lot safer. We used to hitchhike around the place. That sort of thing. It was very beautiful. And
you were in Joburg?
In Durban originally in the beginning. And then we
I
did
see.
do Johannesburg for a little bit, and then Cape Town eventually. So I joined the restaurant, did hotel management, then I came back to the UK, Hyatt International, in Knightsbridge, a little lounge square. And I did a year there, and I was on the fast management track, and I decided to go do another ski season. My mum, still to this day at 82, says, Philly boy, you could be the leader of Hyatt today. Mums are always right, right?
Always, yeah.
And it wasn't my calling. So I did another ski season in Kitzbühel, but this time with a very clear vision to become a ski instructor. So that's what I did. And then went back to South Africa early 93, and then I set up my own restaurant in Cape Town. And it was a restaurant called Pages in Time, Thyme, so it was a play on the words, and it was a beautiful 1901 Victorian home. It was absolutely gorgeous, Josh. It had these pine trees, very similar to what you see in Brazil and in Florida, that were shaved, looked like big pineapples. And that restaurant within the first year became one of the top restaurants.
Really? So this was your restaurant that you owned, and this was in Cape
93, correct, 93 to 97,
Wow.
early 97. And I don't put it down to being the best restaurant because of the food. We hit the 8s, the 9s, the 10 out of 10s, but it was that attention to detail. So, for example, if you came into the restaurant with a friend or a partner, and I noticed you switched your cutlery because you were left-handed, or we would write that detail down, because bearing in mind in those days there wasn't a little laptop at the front desk on any level. Everything's handwritten, and the next time you came in, your cutlery would have been swapped. We would remember the wine you had. We'd have a few other options on ice, or if it were ready for you to make a few suggestions, and we would talk through the food with you in detail, ingredients wise, and give you, whet your palate even before you've even looked at the menu. And so that restaurant I sold in end of 96, beginning of 97, and came back to the UK. Long story short, did a few things, did another ski season in Champéry in the Port du Soleil, where I worked for the Swiss ski school. And then in 2002, I set up I set up a business in the Cotswolds in Gloucestershire. And that was training adult learners for the construction sector. And that was people coming out the armed forces, people that wanted to change careers completely. And so we set up a plumbing program, a 6-week residential plumbing program, which had never been done in this country before. And it was accredited by City and Guilds. And it took off like a rocket. I was married at the time, and I got 2 beautiful daughters. Actually, my ex-wife, lovely woman, she lived in Brazil for many years. So she's fluent in about 5 languages.
Wow.
Anyway, had 2 beautiful girls, moved back to London off the back of selling Step 2 training about 2008. Unfortunately, my marriage, not because we were doing anything silly, she'd become very close and very attached to the girls, and I think we just drifted.
Sure.
We were good as a couple, but then we decided to go down the separation route, which was sad. I joined my brothers in the construction sector. They in Putney area. They did a lot of construction work. We set up a dry cleaning business. We set up an estate agency in Putney, which is still there today. It's a wonderful estate agent called Chamberlain Residential. And then my brothers and I started boxing. We were very close, and we decided for family, we're just going to move apart. At that stage, I was very fortunate to have met Kerry, my wife, and we have now a little bit of a 10-year-old. And I truly believe, Josh, in life, that life prepares you. It's a journey. And God always has a plan. Someone's got a plan for you. And it was out of the blue in 2012, an old mate of mine I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. He came to the restaurant regularly. I met up with him on the odd occasion before those 10 years. And he phoned me up, and I think he had 1 or 2 G&Ts under the belt. It was a Sunday evening.
The best stories always start that way.
He says, "Philly, my boy, what are you up to?" And I was like, and he knows my brothers very well. "How you're ruined? What are you up to?" And I was at that stage at a juncture and wasn't really sure which direction to go. And he said, "Come and have a coffee with me in London." So I went into London, just on St. James Street, just the beautiful beautiful church on Piccadilly. There used to be a Cafe Nero behind it, onto Jermyn Street.
I know it's
gorgeous. Yeah, really gorgeous. Anyway, we sat there, had a coffee, and he said he's running a butler school. I nearly fell off my chair. He had in the past reinvented himself a few times, but in the 10 years I hadn't seen him, he set up a butler school. And he said, "Philip, why don't you join me and come and see what we're doing, with potentially the view to getting involved?"
And did you know much? I mean, I would assume people do know of the Norland nannies.
Yeah.
Pretty world famous insofar as the school of teaching nannies, really. It's the last word in schools for nannies, isn't it? Really,
absolutely.
The Norland nannies. Did you have any idea about any of this, or insofar as did you have any idea of the background of this type of thing? Butler schools, Norland nanny schools, or
just my hospitality experience.
Yeah.
And this gentleman said to me, your background. Pages in Time was such a win, and I'd love your input. And so I sat for about, a couple of weeks complimentary, and I added bits and pieces. And then eventually I started doing a few days here and there for the Butler School paid, which was great. And one day I realized that there was definitely a gap in the market for the lines of etiquette and manners. And when I talk about etiquette and manners, I talk about emotional intelligence as well. So your EQ, it's all part of parts. And I came home and I said to Kerry, I said, I would like to look into setting up an organization that focuses on etiquette and manners. She said, "What a great idea." And so she said, "But you're doing it on your own." And women 9.9 times out quite correct. They have that instinct. And so I went online, no word of a lie, no blueprints, no business plans, and I set up the British School of Etiquette back in those days, and we launched. And the first 6 months were phenomenal, and then we hit a bump in the road, a big bump.
What was the bump?
Things just fell off, Josh. I was head in my hands, and you can imagine, I'm now 56, so we take 12, 13 years from 56. I'm in my mid 40s, so early 40s. I was like a rabbit in front of headlights. My friends were in the city getting ahead, and my mind's playing games with me, and I definitely hit a brick wall mentally and emotionally. Kerry was going off to work every day. This is pre-Harley, and we went away on holiday. She was paying for everything, by the way, everything. And we were on holiday, and she said, "This is now Harley's been born," and she said, "I can see you're not doing well, but you're not giving this up." So I said, "There are two things I want to do: take on some very powerful coaching, and I want to do some CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy." And she said, "Fine, I've got some money in the bank. It's all yours." So I went into some very serious business coaching. It cost into the 10s, 20s, 30s of thousands. But I've paid her back now. But that really put me back on track in a big way. My coach said to me, "Philip, what are you doing in the business?" And I was wearing pretty much every hat apart from doing social media and their website. He said, "You've got to hire someone." Well, Josh, my stomach did 360s. It felt like someone was breakdancing in my stomach. I said, "Coach Joe, you don't understand. I can't afford anything right now." He said, the thing is, when you take on coaching, you have got to listen to your coach. Don't add 10%. So I actually put an advert online, and an incredible woman from Argentina came on board. And like everything in life, it started to add great value. Lucretia started to do more of the transactional side of things. I was doing more transitional things. We became fully accredited. No organization in our industry had ever become fully accredited by City and Guilds, the ILM, Institute of Leadership and Management, a CPD, Continuing Professional Development Provider.
How many? When you say accreditations, how many bodies are out there that you need to?
Well, no one had done this before,
Okay.
and the City and Guilds is possibly one of the most prominent and actually globally renowned. And for me, I've always been fastidious about accreditation, because you and I could set up a business, and even a plumbing business, which is scary, and drive around with the white van in Josh and Philip's plumbing business, and no one can really stop you, believe it or not, which is really scary. And so I wanted to add weight to what we're doing, have our material vetted by professionals, which gave us huge kudos. And as a result, the business, like a ship, you don't just turn the rudder and then swings. It started to swing slowly, and we started to gather huge traction. Lucretia was young. She was 24. She was into social media. She really understood how to connect with people on the phone. And I'm glad to say today we're now the market leader in what we do. We've got an organization in Brazil, Bermuda. We've just launched in the Bahamas. We've launched in Qatar. We've got 2 operations in Pakistan. And we are looking to potentially start something in Thailand in the very near future. And I'm just passionate about seeing people progress and advance in life, and that's my calling.
Where was you spoke about that business coach quite clearly had quite a instrumental change in your trajectory. Where was that? Was that business coach based here in the UK?
No, actually out of America.
Okay.
It was a conglomerate of coaches, but Coach Joey was my main coach, and he was an American gentleman. Very young, very dynamic, very, 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 very driven. So for him, he and I gelled very well. I think it's very important when people connect. You've got to appreciate and understand one another.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems quite ironically in vogue now. I can imagine back then it would have been quite difficult to get that. I mean, everyone these days, you go on the internet and everyone's got a coach, or you know what I mean. And but back then, I can imagine you were really sort of pushing water uphill in some respects. But there must have been was there a light bulb moment that really sort of changed your direction? You said after 6 months you hit a bit of a wall, but then afterwards you said that it really accelerated. What was there a tipping point to this, or?
Yeah, it took working with Coach Joe. It took about 6 months for me to really start getting some proper traction. But everything, I think, when you break things down and you listen to the methodology behind and the rationale, because I think when you're an entrepreneur like you are, you often feel like a rabbit in front of headlights, and it's a lonely place to be at times. And so when they start putting things into perspective and you start to put action in place, everything's about action. Because if you've always done what you've always done, you're always going to do what you've always done. And also being held accountable. someone giving you a kick up the rear end, that accountability was phenomenal.
Was Kerry also?
Big time. She's phenomenal. She's run her own business for the last 25 years. She designs and manufactures lingerie, and she's actually just launching the most beautiful swimwear brand called Baye London, Baye London.
Interesting.
It's absolutely stunning.
Shameless plug. Love it.
It's gorgeous. It really is.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. So the business model today is very much on. It focuses on etiquette. I think it was William Horman, ex-headmaster of Eton,
Yes,
famously said, "Manners maketh the man."
100%.
Where do you see etiquette and manners connecting into the business world, and where do you see this trajectory going of this industry that you're in?
Josh, I have a quote on my studio wall, and it goes along the lines of, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And for me, etiquette and manners, and as I mentioned earlier, it's the full circle of emotional intelligence. When you adopt etiquette and manners, the biggest doors in the world open for you. And how do we make ourselves relevant in today's society? And AI, great. Machines, great. But if you can't connect human to human on a dynamic level, then it doesn't hold water. And the more relevant we become in society today, and incorporating how do we show up, our business etiquette, our business excellence, our lifestyle as well, because etiquette and manners is a lifestyle choice. And that is how you're showing up at home and how you're showing up outside the home, how you're showing up for your family. So with our journey, we really take people into putting flesh on the bone about what etiquette and manners truly are. And it's a lot of people in the world, it's for posh people. Well, actually, it's for everybody in the world. I've seen some of the worst people behave shockingly in the so-called, either nouveau riche or posh, or they think they can just throw their weight around. And I think one of my very dear colleagues, he says, there are too many arrogant people and not enough people with substance. What we need is people with serious substance and less arrogance.
You touched on something there which I thought was quite interesting, which is etiquette outside the home. You have etiquette, how you are outside the home. In this modern day where we are working from home and a lot of businesses are remote, how has that dynamic changed etiquette and manners? Because of course it's very different doing this one-to-one as it would be if we were doing this over Zoom, and how you present yourself in the modern world, shall we say, where there's remote work.
Etiquette and manners manners are always consistent. Etiquette, you've got to adapt. Etiquette are those rules of engagement. So working from home, if you're doing Zoom calls and you meeting, you still present yourself out of the top drawer. You dress accordingly, you make sure you get up and you look good, you're groomed, and you connect and you make visual contact, because you and I, when we greet each other, could give each other a handshake and connect with our beautiful body language. So when you come to things such as working online, you've got to work out other ways to connect and build rapport with people. And that's what this is about, is building rapport in different ways. And that's what obviously that wretched, dare we mention it, COVID taught us, is there were a lot of people doing work in their pajamas and so the lackadaisicalness has kicked in, and I think we've got to sharpen up more than ever before.
I see this more commonly now, and I don't know whether this is me just getting older, but I'm seeing a lot of young people not even able to look people in the eye.
Absolutely.
I know it's a very small. It sounds a small thing, but it's actually quite a big deal when you're interacting with other people. But I see this with a lot of young people, that there is this coyness. I don't know whether it is being coy or being shy, or whether it's just they're not engaging with people. Yeah. So there's clearly, I've seen this, and I don't know whether I've noticed this post-COVID just because I'm more aware of it, or whether this has actually had quite a seismic change in how people interact with one another. Totally.
And I don't want to blame technology totally, but it's definitely got a huge amount to do with technology. And people now can hide behind their technology. And not only that, social media. I think social media is a travesty. And you've got a beautiful son, and I've got a beautiful son, and I'm not giving my son any access to social media until he's at least 16. because I don't want the world to teach him how to grow up or influence him how to grow up. He can play a game every now and then, but as far as social media goes, I feel it's a travesty. People are trying to be what they're not. People are growing up far too quickly, and you're quite right. That eye contact is lacking, that beautiful smile passing on the street, the connection of shaking a hand, a good solid handshake. And a good solid handshake, by the way, is the equivalent of 3 hours rapport building.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone out there, we work on networking, etiquette, and skills. That is one of the key elements of connecting with someone. That's subject to the other person wanting to shake hands. One thing that I think this whole journey taught us as well, there are other ways to greet, like the namaste, or you put your hand on your heart, and obviously it's very strong in the Arabic world. They would say assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, that type of thing. But it really is a very key connection, that handshake. And something that you alluded to again about the eye contact, there's an article that was presented on Fox News in December earlier this year. They interviewed 800 companies. 51% of the interviewees showed up in the wrong clothing. 48% of them asked for unreasonable salaries. 19% took a parent with them.
Sorry?
Yeah. And these, absolutely, if I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, there were 6 things they pointed out.
Brought a parent
with them to an interview.
To a job interview?
Yeah, and X amount percent didn't turn their cameras on when they were being interviewed via Zoom.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah. And that's just serious, because we do a huge amount of research in our organization, and companies are actually introducing etiquette and manners classes into their organizations.
I was going to ask you about this. What is the delta between private individuals looking at improving that network etiquette or their sort of social interactions or broadening their networks, whatever the case may be, and businesses doing this for their own employees?
Businesses have cottoned onto it now because of that relational capital. We've got to build rapport with each other. You can have the best products in the world, but if you don't have the right person to connect with your potential clients or customers, it's not going to work. It really and truly isn't. And more organizations now have realized that empathy, actually it's known fact that empathy is possibly the strongest skill set that any leader can obtain or attain. It's phenomenal. And some of the top leaders in the world have great empathy. And that's part of your emotional intelligence. And that's the beautiful thing about etiquette and manners and emotional intelligence. If you weren't born with it, or you weren't given a guidance or steering, you can adopt it. You can actually study the whole journey into this arena and improve yourself right across the board.
It's interesting you say this, because there's quite a lot of studies out on people who run businesses and the emotional intelligence that a leader has. Also, sometimes probably conflicts a little bit with a lot of articles I've read about leaders who are, I mean, the word narcissist gets bandied around quite a lot these days, but there is also that side to it as well. And I wonder what your take is on, is it emotional intelligence superseding that narcissism, or?
I just pray that narcissism starts. I mean, it never will diminish, but it is a horrible characteristic, and it really is. I know. I think if you know narcissists, you know one too many. Quite frankly, and I know that's pretty harsh, but for me, even if you were leaning into being a narcissist, you could absolutely shift. That's if you wanted to. But it takes a huge amount of work, Josh. It's like everything in life, adopting emotional intelligence, not abracadabra and a bunny rabbit jumps out the hat. It's an ongoing process, and we're human beings, we make mistakes. So one of the things we share with a lot of our students is do not allow your mood to dictate your manners. How often do we allow our mood to dictate our manners?
Nearly all the time.
Too often, right? So we adopt tools such as, let's say, a 6-second rule. So heaven forbid, but let's say you've asked your son once and then twice, and then you snap at him. Or you use a 6-second rule and you find a different way to connect with your beautiful man. That is fundamental in all our relationships. And we have a program called etiquette, which is starting for 6-year-olds to roughly 10, and then we have mindset and confidence, mindset and resilience, and mindset and money for teenagers. And then we go to the polished student, the polished graduate, and the polished professional. And we teach this with the 6-year-olds. And we've actually had half a dozen parents come through and take a course with us because they saw the improvement in their child.
Really?
Yeah.
It should be almost form part of the curriculum, would you not say?
It's not. Schools, it's extraordinary. Schools, either they're trying too hard to get their Ofsted results up, or they just don't have time. I truly believe that schools are shoving too much work and education. I'm all for education. I think education is a gift. We are blessed. But I think we could slow down and give our children the skill set that's actually going to serve them for the rest of their lives.
Do you think the results are arguably less tangible and therefore it doesn't form part of the curriculum? Would that be an argument?
I don't really know. It's a good question. All I do know is that and no doubt you and I haven't had long enough to have a tete-a-tete, but yeah, I've seen chaps who were at school with me who were very bright, but their careers got to a certain level. And I've seen other chaps who were super excellent at sport, good all-rounders, average in the classroom, but they had this ability to connect with people, the EQ, and they've soared like an eagle. Soared like an eagle.
There's I was very lucky because I went to a private school in the UK, and I've actually got a few friends who went to Peter Maritzburg. If you know.
Which Maritzburg College?
Yeah,
Michael House or Hilton?
No, Hilton.
Hilton. That's our big rival.
Yes. So they went to Peter Maritzburg. Anyway, so I happened to work with them a few years ago. But it's interesting, you could always tell someone who had that private education normally, because and I know there's an argument in the UK because an Englishman is branded on the tongue. I've heard all the quotes before, but there is a sort of an EQ that you have that gets drummed into you from the very first days of school, where you have this. It's not innate, but this confidence of conducting yourself in a public sphere so much better than, let's say, I've observed this, non-privately educated people. And it's interesting because, as you said, Oliver goes to a public school, and I do think there'd be huge value in adopting this in the education system, because you can always see it. You can always 100%. See it a mile away. You mentioned earlier that etiquette is seen, a lot of people see it as a posh thing.
Yes.
What are some of the other big misconceptions that you would say that people have about etiquette?
They don't understand what it actually means. Etiquette is actually, it's a French word which means to label, to stick, and it was Louis XIV's gardener who got actually fed up with the upper echelon of society just literally misbehaving at the Palace of Versailles. And they're walking across the grass, picking fruit, walking into people's bedrooms, making a noise around the place of worship. And the gardener started putting labels around the property, do not walk on the grass. And it is said that a lot of English people were over there at the time, and they liked this idea of a bit of formality, and therefore it was sort of really introduced. I mean, let's be serious. If there's a line, the Americans call it a cue, an Englishman will go and join it, where there's conformity, that type of thing.
What is it about the British psyche that is that? I've always found that funny, but what is it about the British psyche that lends itself so much to this idea of manners?
It was, I think, again, it was instilled from, it's been around, with all due respect, Confucius back in 540 something BC. He was a man about do unto others as you wish them to do unto you type thing. And it's in all our religious books, the golden rule. And I think this is something we should all adopt. And again, one of the things that I think and it's dipped in the UK, that's for sure, the world over, manners and etiquette have fallen away a lot. And it's very sad to see. And growing up, funny enough, a very old mate of mine, he said to me when I set up the organisation, he said, Philly, I remember where you had manners, you just fitted right in. It was when you had bad manners that you stood out. Now when you've got good manners, you stand out. And it opens doors wherever you go. And I just want everyone to understand that even if you're having a bad day, you do not let your manners down. You do not lower your standards. You've got to elevate it, actually. You've got to take the negativity that you might be feeling off yourself. Pay someone a compliment. Give them a smile. Do that random act of goodness or kindness. And that's what the organization was founded on, Josh. It was founded on 6 pillars. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. The second one is the ability to put people at ease in a very short space of time. It's having a what can I do for you attitude. How can I serve you? What can I do for you? It's very much, I alluded to earlier, if we all go out there and do a random act of goodness or kindness on a daily basis, I truly know and believe we can set the world in the right direction. There's one race, and that's the human race, and we need to park the past, focus on the present, and be very, very clear on what the future holds and how we can shift the future. And the sixth one is that we are all shepherds. We have the duty and the ability to guide and steer people. We have the ability to influence. Now, influence is dangerous because it's like fire. You can either burn yourself or you can keep yourself warm, and it can look after you. So do we take our friends, our families down the right route, or do we take them down the wrong route? And those are the 6 pillars that the organization is founded on. So it's got very little to do with the so-called etiquette and manners. Etiquette and manners just happen to be the so-called vehicle that we adopt in order to behave in a cordial way. And etiquette's about the rules of engagement. So if you go to a foreign country, you mentioned that you're off to Brazil soon, there's certain things that how you would conduct yourself in Brazil. There's certain sign languages that you wouldn't incorporate in Brazil. Little nuances like leaving a handbag on the floor. Not that you carry a handbag, I don't believe.
I don't.
No, okay. Just checking.
I know it's 2024, but...
Yeah, I've seen many. But your money runs away. All these little nuances say, go to the Arab world. You'd have to dress accordingly. You'd have to... It's how do we respect one another? They're like the traffic lights in society. They're there, so they're actually there to help us.
I would argue that traveling is probably one of the biggest eye-openers. That's another thing that I think should be encouraged as part of the curriculum.
100%.
I learnt more traveling the world than I ever did really
100%.
at school. I think sort of understanding different cultures. Speak about the Middle East. I've been there several times. I spent a lot of the time as a kid in the Far East, and you see, such a different culture. Interestingly, when you handed me your business card earlier, you did it with both hands.
Correct.
A very big thing in Japan is handing the business card with 2 hands.
Absolutely.
These are very small things which you only pick up on if you do happen to travel quite a lot. What are some of the daily habits that any person at home listening to this could incorporate quickly to suddenly elevate their manners and their etiquette that they could? I know it's not a quick fix.
It's a great question. I love that question. For me, Josh, everything in life's about gratitude. I get up every morning and I find a powerful quote for myself. I then write down 3 things that I'm hugely grateful for. It could be the warm bed I slept in. It was coming here today was one of my things I'm hugely grateful for. I write down 3 things that would make today really, really great. And then I find a positive affirmation for myself along the lines of I'm blessed and I'm privileged to be able to guide and steer people and give them the tools to shift and change their lives. When I go just before going to bed tonight, I'll write down 3 things or 4 things that I was truly grateful for in the day that happened to me. And I'll ask myself one more question. How could I have made today even better? What could I have done a little bit differently to make today better? And I can honestly tell you that if you start as you mean to go on in life and you incorporate good habits into your life, you will see a shift and a change. And so it's slowing down. It's incorporating the 6-second rule on a daily basis. And we have to sometimes maybe use 20 minutes, walk around the block if we're really peeved. But we're human beings learning to say sorry. Not, I'm sorry, Josh, but I did that because you said X, Y, and Z to me. That's not an apology. So those for me are 2 fundamental areas. Dressing sharper, looking sharp, making an effort, because people see you before they hear you. And when you dress sharp or dress accordingly, there's a thing called enclothes cognition. It has amazing mental effect on how we behave and how we act.
Somebody once told me, dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have.
100%.
On the subject of personal grooming, I'm conscious of time. Hair. People judge you before you've even opened your mouth half the time.
Absolutely.
Run me through your hair story.
Sure.
Obviously, you had surgery. When did you have the surgery?
In August of last year.
Run me through what initiated the whole thinking behind it.
Certainly. My mum's brother, who was, I think, 8 years ahead of my mum growing up. In 21, he had literally just... And my 2 brothers and my sister and my dad had a really good head of hair, and so does my mum. But maybe it was the restaurant, the stress, but I started to adopt a little monk's cowl here, thinning. I used to have beautiful hair at school, and it didn't really bother me, but I noticed that they were, receding and that sort of thing. And funny enough, I was looking at a photograph when Kerry and I got married at the end of 2011, and and I had my hair quite short at that stage. I was really thin, thinning honestly, no disrespect to the Jewish faith. I love going into synagogues, but I wouldn't have needed a yarmulke. I mean, the monk's cowl already started coming along, and I think in my industry specifically, I've had my hair short, and it doesn't really suit me. Some people get away with it. They got maybe an eye-shaped head, and they get away with it, a shaved head or short hair. And some people, even the baldness suits certain people. But for me, I just felt that I needed to sort of look into this. And it was just by pure coincidence, I met this amazing Brazilian woman who happened to be working for Vinci. And she handed me this pamphlet, and I took it home, and I said to Kerry, I'd like to go and because it's a complimentary initial call. I wouldn't recommend Axel, though. Fellow South African, he's a lovely man. Anyway, so I went along, and Axel was teed up, and
Axel does get teed up.
Yeah, and I just from the moment I walked into Vinci, it really gave me a feeling of being comfortable, and it gave me the opportunity to really, because there's always been sort of communication about hair transplants and growing your hair and whatever it is, and this really works for me. It's been a life-changing experience.
What's been the reaction of family and friends and whatever else?
It's just huge. My mum said to me, actually I was back in South Africa in April, and I hadn't told her I had a hair transplant. She said to me, Philip, boy, you're looking a bit different. Have you done something to your hair? I said, yeah, Mum, I had a hair transplant. Wow, why didn't you tell me? Blah, blah, blah. But it really has made a huge difference. I've noticed it. I feel more confident.
I was going to ask you about confidence.
I feel so much more confident. And I tell you, I'm really pleased with the result, in the sense that it is not only the result, Josh. From the moment I walked into Vinci, the staff there were exponential. The service, the friendliness, they were thoughtful, kind, caring. Every time I've gone back, so I've gone back for the various treatments. Is it the PRP and the other ingredient? And I go. So I've taken a course of those, because it's like everything in life. You've got to use maintenance. It doesn't just you've got to take care of how you treat yourself, whether it be going to the gym, eating correctly, and coming to the hair transplant. You've got to sort of help it on its way, maintain it. And so for me, the whole journey and experience has been phenomenal. And I would shout from the rooftops, if anyone had any doubt about a hair transplant, at least go and have a consultation, because it'll shift and change your feeling about yourself as well. It elevates you, that's for sure.
Do you think we're living in a more image-conscious world?
I think we need to be image-conscious. And I'm not saying arrogant. I think how you show up is fundamental. How do you show up every single day is really important. Am I into, as the Brazilians call it, a bunda? Am I into someone having their bunda enhanced? No, I'm not. I'm not into the Kardashian world. I'm really not. I think a little bit of Botox, definitely teeth. I think teeth are fundamental. Why
is that? Is it because of the smile?
Smile. People are very conscious about their teeth. That you often see people laughing or smiling and holding their hand above. It's how do you want to be perceived? Do you want to be taken seriously? And I'm not saying you need to be serious, but because everyone needs to have a sense of humor and have a bit of fun in life, or a lot of fun. But for me, it's about how do we show up, and not only that, it gives you confidence, because when I'm coaching and training, and even today, I love to put a blazer on and a tie if I need to, and the amount of compliments I get are huge, in so many different environments, and I feel good. It gives me that elevation, that confidence to put my best foot forward, even if I were having a bit of a tough start to the day.
Isn't it interesting how much of an impact it can really have?
Oh, it's huge.
It is massive.
It is. And funny enough, on that note, an old mate of mine who actually went to Hilton, one day we were sitting, and he was on stage quite a lot, and lovely looking man, and I noticed he didn't smile a lot in his photographs. And I said to him, but you must go and get your teeth sorted. He says, that's a bit direct. I said, let me tell you, you are so conscious of your teeth. He started, I think 3 days later, he had an appointment for Invisalign. I think 14 months into his Invisalign treatment, he phoned me up. He says, it's the best thing that anyone's ever told me to do in my life. Now the guy's confident. He smiles like a Cheshire cat. It's unreal. Unbelievable.
What would you say to anyone who's on the fence about it?
Just go and chat to someone. Go and look at old photographs of yourself and how you looked, and how did you feel in those days? How did you how are you showing up then? And just because we age doesn't mean we have to age and deteriorate. We can look after ourselves. You know, it's what we eat, it's what we drink, it's how do we go, you know, keeping our bodies. And I truly, it's for me, it's a 360 approach really at the end of the day. Because if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not working hard and you don't have, what do you call it, a structure to your day and plan, you're going to fall down somewhere along the line.
Yeah, it's really, it's interesting you talk about that confidence. The confidence that after I did mine, which was, I'm trying to think back now, it's probably about 2 years ago, maybe a bit more. Yeah, the confidence it gives you. I mean, I've always been a pretty confident guy anyway, so it's never really been much of an issue. But it's amazing how the compliments. It really, I think it's different for a guy as well, because you very rarely get compliments. I think women are better at complimenting.
You're hanging around the wrong places.
Well,
Josh.
that's probably true as well.
I'm teasing.
Yeah.
You're right. You're so right.
But
right.
that's probably true. But I think women tend to compliment more. I think they can be more scathing.
Absolutely.
Whereas guys just don't comment.
Yeah.
But so to have guys commenting, saying like you're looking really good and stuff, I think Jesus, like that is quite an unusual experience to have.
Completely.
You know, and it's, you know, I'm sure that manifests itself in different ways, right? Whether it, you know, suddenly work improves and all the rest of it. I'm sure those things are interlinked. But anyway, listen, I'm conscious of time, Philip. I know we've got to shoot. Really interesting having you coming over. We do need to do this again, I think.
I'd love to.
There's so much I want to ask you about when it comes to the school itself, also different cultures and etiquette. You mentioned, obviously, it's international. We can cover that another time. But thank you very much for coming. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Be sure to check out the next episode. But for now, Philip Sykes, thank you.
Thanks for your time.